Hi folks, my name is Andy Manili and I am the maker of Squib. And I wanted to show you today a little bit about my toolkit, my workflow, and how I actually work. I use Squib a lot lately. I've actually been using Squib more than I have been working on Squib itself. But there are many ways to do this. I get a lot of questions about this, and I think my setup is pretty cool. So I wanted to show it to you. So my main tool here is Atom. So Atom is a lightweight programming text editor. It's great. It's a lot like Sublime Text if you're familiar with that. It actually has a tree of your files because Squib projects tend to have lots of different files. We tend to kind of break them up that way. So you can see that there's a big source tree along the left-hand side here. That way you're not fumbling around in Windows Explorer. It has the ability to open up image files, so I can actually open up ping files, and then Atom will auto refresh every time I update that ping file. So I can rebuild and it will automatically update. I don't have to hit refresh or anything like that. So that's really great. I like to have a couple of the images that I'm working on open all the time, and I like to scale some of them down to what their actual size is. So you can see over here, Demolitions Guide. This one is actually scaled to on the resolution on my particular monitor, it's actually 2.5 by 3.5 inches. So that way it's going to look the way it's going to look on the table. But I also have a zoomed in version. And of course, you can move all this around. And sometimes I'll track a dozen of these at once. And some computers that I have multiple monitors. And so I like to put this on a separate monitor or something. So in Atom, because you're opening and closing files a lot when you're working with Squib, I like to use Control-P to open up various files and switch between them. Very slick, very easy. You can see it looks great. So when it comes time to run, I use the command prompt. So I don't use, I could actually use a command prompt that is inside of Atom. They do have that as a plugin. I don't actually set that up, but I like to just use the regular old command prompt. So let me show this to you in split screen here. If I want to just run my code, I have a rake file set up. You can look at how I do this. All of this is open source. It's all on GitHub. I'll provide a link in the description below. But the rake file allows me to build particular parts of my deck without rebuilding my entire project. Rebuilding my entire project takes about 30 seconds. That's kind of long. So let me just rebuild the characters, for example. It just loads just my characters file. So I can type rake characters, and that will rebuild all of my characters. Now, actually, in this situation, you can see that it automatically updated very quickly. I actually accidentally just now rebuilt it in black and white because I have them in both black and white and color. But I can also say rake with color characters, and that will actually, I think that will actually build them back as color. There you go. So I'm constantly kind of switching back and forth. Really the key. I teach programming for a living. I teach software engineering actually as a living, as a college professor. And the best way to program is to constantly be running your code, to constantly be working, because any mistake you make, you should be finding it very quickly after you make that mistake. So if you work for a long time without rerunning a lot, then you're just incurring more and more what we call technical debt. So anyway, now, a good way to rerun your stuff all the time is to actually do that automatically, and I actually use something called Guard for that. So lately I've been using this a lot. It's kind of a nifty tool. So it's a Ruby gem. You'll have to install it separately. I'll provide a link to it. But the idea here is you set up this Guard file and you have it watch certain kinds of files in your code, and so for example, if an Excel file or a YAML file gets edited, it will automatically update. And even you can do this with image files. So like I might be editing some sort of background or what this shadow here looks like or whatever, and I'll just hit save in Inkscape and it'll automatically rebuild. So it's really slick. So let me do that. Actually, let me first put this on color mode permanently. Squib build color. I'm setting an environment variable so that my color build group gets set to color. That way it always builds in color. For this demo, bundle exec rake, bundle exec guard-g characters. I know that's a really long thing. That's kind of a quirk of Ruby because I'm using bundler to execute guard, and then within guard, I'm executing a group, and that group is executing a rake task. So I've hooked all those things together. This is actually, again, you can look at how I do it and just copy me. That's fine. Yeah, I get a couple of errors here because I got to fix that in Squib, but don't worry about that. So as you can see, it rebuilds. And at any time, I can go in here and say, hey, go rebuild. I just hit enter, and it will automatically rebuild. But I can also say I go in here and I want to put in, I want to say maybe, take out the cork background or something. I can make a change real quick, and it will automatically rebuild. So you can see here that it automatically rebuilt. Boom, and now the cork background is gone. So it's pretty quick. And if you have multiple monitors, I like to have this console kind of off to a separate monitor. That way I can kind of always see if I'm getting some sort of error, but I'm not always necessarily switching to it. That way I'm like always focusing inside of Atom. And then a couple other things that I tend to have open while I work is I like to have, obviously the docs. I put a lot of work into documenting Squib, and so go keep this open, and especially the DSL reference. That's where you're going to get all the details. And then I also use a tool for Git called Git extensions. That's my favorite Git client. I mean, everybody has their own favorite Git client. Actually, the next version of Atom that's going to come out 1.18 is supposed to have Git support, so I might start using that. But this is my Git client that I like to use. I like to put everything in Git. That's a very common programmer kind of thing. And then I actually push this to GitHub. And so here's my GitHub if you want to see what that looks like. From there, I use a build service called Travis. And so you can kind of see how I compile my Travis file. Inside of Travis, I actually build this in Squib, and I install the fonts that I need. So what this does is when I push my code to GitHub, Travis will automatically create a Linux container, and it will build it, and it will run Squib on all this stuff, and it'll upload the file, and then actually when it's done, it will actually upload it to, I have it set up to load to Dropbox, and I also have it set up where if I tag my release on Git, it will create a release of the project on GitHub. And so it's a good way to kind of have a way of like releasing your game, or at least posting it to Dropbox or something, so that maybe somebody else could see it, or it's now on my phone so I can show it to my friends or pitch it to somebody easily. Anyway, that is my workflow. That's generally how I work. Those are my tools. You may have your own. I'd love to see your suggestions for things that you use down in the comments below. Otherwise, happy squibbing.